Welcome to Prospects to Pros, where we talk about the guys that are about to get drafted, the guys that just got drafted, and everybody in between. I'm Andy Staples, here with the original Prospects to Pros lineup. It's back. The band is back together. Dane Brugler, the Athletics draft analyst, and Lance Zierlein from NFL.com. If you read about a player on NFL.com and you disagree with how he was evaluated, you can yell at Lance. Hi, guys.
How's it going?
How was vacation, Andy?
It was wonderful. Utah, cold. I attempted to ski, crashed many, many times. It felt a little like playing football again. Like you forget what falling, like when you're playing football, you fall a ton and you get used to it and it becomes just part of your daily routine. When you don't do that normally, and then you spend an entire day falling, it's like, oh, this is what football practice felt like.
Yeah, it gets a little tougher as you get older too, right? I mean, just
the next morning is brutal. Yeah. So, but I lived and I'm back and I'm very excited because I come back to a mock draft from you, Dane, and I have so many questions. I'm not going to get to the one where my jaw hit the floor yet, because I want to start where everybody else wants to start, and that's numero uno. And we talked about this on the last episode. What are the Bears going to do with that number one pick? They obviously don't need a quarterback. They obviously do need everything else. So who needs a quarterback? Who's going to trade? And you have predicted one.
Yeah, I hate doing trades in mock drafts, especially this early. And most of these teams don't even have a head coach yet. The Colts don't have a head coach yet. So, it's way too early to be predicting trades. But I think the overwhelming opinion is the Bears will not be making that pick at number one. So, okay, let's look at the teams that'll be potentially looking to move up. If I'm the Bears, I'm hoping to hear from the Indianapolis Colts. I think, staying at inside the top four picks, there's value in that. I heard from Indianapolis fans saying, oh, we're giving up way too much. Bears fans, not giving up. We're not getting enough. In this scenario, I had the Colts trading the 4th overall pick, their 2nd round pick this year, which is 35 overall, and then a 1st rounder next year, which I think is a pretty fair package to move back 3 spots. If you're the Bears, you have to feel good about that. But even if you do get a better offer from like the Panthers at 9 or whatever, staying within the top 4 picks, potentially to get one of those 2 defensive linemen, Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, there's value in that. And so that's what happened in this scenario. The Colts move up to number 1. I had him taking Bryce Young, which look, that would be very off type for Chris Ballard. Lance, I mean, you know Chris as well, and you'll be able to add some context to this. But we know how Chris he likes big guys. He size measurables at each position. He sticks to those usually. Bryce Young and it being the quarterback position, I think it might be a little different, and especially with the current state of where Indianapolis is, and it's just all about getting the right guy. I did put Bryce Young there at number 1 of the Colts. I don't feel great about it because of some of those things. But, in this scenario, this first scenario, I think that's at least a realistic option that we can look at.
Yeah, I know that when I visited back in 2017 to camp when he first took over, I had a chance to look at their scouting manual, and they had a really cool thing in there which showed, this is back in 17, but the NFL starters at every position, what the averages were from a size standpoint, from a workout standpoint for all the starters. And then they had what was the Colts bottom line. Like where do you start getting into taking exceptions, And I remember his quarterback bottom line, I just remember this specifically. It was like 6'1", 215 or 214, something like that. Well, Bryce Young falls so far below the normal range for quarterbacks. Now, quarterbacks have gotten smaller, so maybe the Colts have come down with that as time has passed because there are smaller quarterbacks in the NFL, but they're typically going to be over 200 pounds. And this is under, to give up what they're going to have to give up more than likely to trade up and land Bryce Young. If they did this, which your mock draft has, I think of 2 things. Number 1, Ballard wants to find the best quarterback possible. It's one thing to love traits. It's another when you're dealing with quarterback is you got to find a special guy. You got to find a guy who has the intangibles and the makeup. And so that's not going to be, it's one thing to have traits as a pass rusher and you coach it. You can't really coach quarterback intangibles, I don't think. I think you either have them or you don't. So that's where I could see the traits maybe not making as much of a difference with the decision for the Colts. And the other thing you have to remember is how much is Jim Irsay involved in this? And does Jim Irsay want to pull the trigger on, I don't know, maybe Ballard would like CJ Stroud better. Maybe he'd rather sit tight or even trade back and take Levis or Richardson or something like that. I have no idea. I haven't spoken to him about it, but I do know that they are one of those teams that are kind of in desperation mode right now. And Bryce, to me, is clearly, I think he's the best quarterback in this draft. And, it just happens to be, he's also going to be the smallest starting quarterback from a frame standpoint that we've seen in well over 2 decades, maybe dating back about 25 years. I've done the research on it, and Johnny Manziel was technically bigger, even though their body types are similar. Kyler Murray weighs more. Russell Wilson weighs a lot more. They've got sturdier, thicker frames. So this is uncharted territory. You got to go back to Montana, and Dave Craig, and some quarterbacks in the 80s and 90s to find sub 200 quarterbacks.
So do we all agree that Bryce Young, at least in our opinions, of the quarterbacks in this class, is the best at football?
I think so.
Lance, as of the time we're taping this, your rankings and evaluations reports are not up on NFL.com just yet. But how does this quarterback position this year? How does it lay out for you in terms of how you look at the top 4 or 5 guys?
Well, so I'm going to officially do Bryce Young tomorrow, and I'm going to do it on a Twitch stream so that I may make it available to the general public where you'll get to see my entire process through my radio station's website of the screen when I'm watching tape, when I'm going through the data points, what the entire process looks like. I'll have a microphone and I'll explain what I'm looking at. We plan on doing that tomorrow at 2:00. So, but I already know from watching the games, Bryce Young's going to be my top quarterback. CJ Stroud, I said this on Twitter. I wasn't in love with CJ Stroud during the year. There's just a lot of the same stuff over and over I've seen. I didn't like the fact that he never pulls the ball on zone reads. He's got opportunities to help his team, and he doesn't take it with his legs. And then I watched the Georgia game and with an open mind, and I was just blown away. I mean, the guy was, they ran a lot of this boot action stuff where they'd set up and throw back across the field. They ran that play 2 or 3 times. He threw it with timing. I thought he saw the field well. He had good escapability out of the pocket. He extended plays with his legs. All the things that he threw on the run well. And then when you go through the data points, and it shows itself on the game too, and on game tape, he's the most accurate of any of these of any of the 5 major quarterbacks. In all the data points that you look at, he's the most accurate. When you watch him on tape, especially that Georgia game, man, the ball delivery was just really, really nice. So Dane, he's 2 for me. I've got Richardson and Levis about the same mark. Okay. And there's different arguments you can make for both guys. I think the guy who is more likely to give you something because of his legs is Richardson. So, Levis has great arm talent. There's a lot of things to like, but both of them are very concerning to me as quarterbacks 3 and 4. Like, I've got a second round grade on them, a 63. I think they both go in the first round. And then I haven't gotten a Hendon Hooker yet just because, and I like Hooker, but watching some tape on him when I wrote up Hyatt, he's a half field reader, torn up knee. He's going to be a 26-year-old rookie. Like, I kind of just leave him out of the mix because I think he's going to be the 5th, even though I think he has talent. But Dane, here's a question for you. How much are we putting on a Georgia game? Yeah. Because the old thing is, if they show it on tape, that means they can do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
So how much are you putting on that one game? On that one game?
Why didn't we see this more from CJ Stroud? Why did it take a game where they could prepare for a month, and why did it take this long for us to see this version of CJ Stroud? I don't know. And we saw a little bit of it from here. He had a long scramble against Northwestern, and there were other things too. But we just didn't see it consistently. I'm with you. I think if you grade CJ Stroud as strictly from the pocket, we know he can carve you up. He is accurate, and his decision making from the pocket is outstanding. But your biggest issue with him is he wasn't a creator. He wasn't a guy that, when forced to move his feet, And out of structure, he wasn't comfortable. Even some of those plays against Georgia, he didn't look very comfortable, but at least he could do it and, create positive plays. So, yeah, how do you grade that moving forward? Is this something that, he's going to be able to tap into on a regular basis at the next level? There will be differing opinions on that. The answer will not be the same for every team and every evaluator, and it will be fascinating. That's why CJ Stroud could be number 1 for some teams in this draft. He might be number 3 in terms of the pecking order of these quarterbacks for some teams. It's a really interesting evaluation.
I'll play devil's advocate and also the proxy for the Ohio State fans who are still mad at Ryan Day for everything, that they didn't feel like they needed it. It only came out when they needed it. They probably flipped the Georgia tape on and said, oh God, we can't do what we normally do against these monsters. We're going to have to make CJ do a little more. And it turned out it was in there. You mentioned the Northwestern game with the big scrambles. That was another case where they absolutely needed it. The wind was blowing like 35 miles an hour. You could not throw the ball. And their line was not getting much of a push against Northwestern's D line. They needed to move the ball on the ground, and Stroud was the only one who could do it. So
that's fair. And I think I agree with you 100%. The only thing I'd push back on a little is going back to high school. This is how CJ Stroud always has been. Like you talk to his high school coaches and they say how he wants to be a pocket passer first and foremost. He does not like, he does not want running to be a major part of what he does. And I don't know if it's just a comfort level thing with him or whatever, but we saw if using his legs, he has that type of ability against Georgia, and it wasn't against a average defense. It was against a really good defense.
Yeah, guys that'll all be in the NFL. Now, I will say, when you're comparing Stroud and Young, it's a very good point. Young also wants to be a pocket passer. Young is definitely not a run-first guy, but he has a really good sense of when he should and feels very comfortable doing it.
Right. And he almost, and Lance, we've talked about this before, how he almost welcomes the chaos, like too much. Like and that's what you worry about with him, with that build. And it's not necessarily the height. I mean, yes, you wish he was 6'2.5", but it's more the frame, the build, just very slender. And I don't care what you're giving him, what type of workout regimen. He's not going to be a 205-pound quarterback. That's not how he's built. So he's going to, at the combine, my guess is he'll be 5'10" and 3/8, 192 pounds. That's just my guess of what he'll be. And I don't think he's going to get that much bigger in the NFL. It's just not how his body is made. And so when he welcoming all that chaos, just giving a route an extra half second to develop, that in the NFL, in college, even in the SEC, that's fine. You can get away with that. In the NFL, that might be a huge hit on your body. And so that is the main concern with Young.
The size I've heard on him from a scout who I guess got the number from inside the Alabama building is 5'11.5", 195. Now,
5'11.5"?
195.
No way. He's 5'11".
I believe is the number. And I immediately, when I heard that, I thought, okay, that might be. I mean, you're not sitting there by the measuring stick and the scale. So there's no way he's 5'11.5". I'm with you. Could he turn out to be 5'11"? Maybe, if you really extend that neck as long as you can. And from a weight standpoint, if I'm his, here's what I'm going to predict is going to happen. He's going to come in weighing 201 pounds.
And not run,
not run, and he'll work out at his pro day. That's my prediction. Is they want to,
but he won't weigh in at his pro day.
Yeah, exactly right.
He'll conveniently walk past the scale,
and then he won't weigh at his pro day. That's my prediction about what's going to happen. Is they're going to get him over the magic 200 mark, and then from there they'll wait until his pro day to throw. Now I hope that doesn't happen. I want to look.
It's so silly. I mean,
we know how big he is.
Yeah,
we know how big he is. The 200 is not a. Hey, wait a minute. We got to change our mind here. He's 200 now.
Right.
He's like he's 200. We didn't anticipate this. But think about this, Dane. To your point, Russell Wilson, Johnny Manziel, Kyler Murray. You just mentioned Bryce Young, and I feel like there's another one in here, but smaller quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker will work from the pocket, but a lot of those guys are fine with it going off schedule because I think subconsciously, or rather maybe very consciously, they got to get out of the pocket because it's harder to see from a passing lane standpoint, number one. And number two, it's just a bunch of big bodies around you, and you want to be able to operate in space. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, there have been, Lamar does it. Deshaun Watson does it. Mark Brunell used to do it when he was kind of a scrambler. There's been lots of quarterbacks who feel comfortable outside of the pocket and operating outside of the pocket. But I think Bryce does make a concerted effort to show you that he can win from the pocket. And sometimes when he scrambles, he doesn't just drop the ball and take off. What he does is he gets out of the pocket and then he's coasting, still looking down the field. Like he is not a super willing runner. He's not. And either is CJ Stroud. And the thing with Stroud that's different to me is that CJ, you got to be. Yeah. You got to be, because the game has gone in that direction, and it's so valuable. You don't have to be Justin Fields, but you do need to show that you are willing to go get the first down.
Especially
with your legs.
There.
Yeah.
So many times
you're leaving yards on the field, and that's selfish. Like that doesn't help your team. So sometimes you're going to need to do that on the next level. And I was looking at my notes on him right now. You see, I color coded them, and I wrote this, and I wrote this because I watched the Georgia game, and I'm not sure which side this belongs on, the top side pros or the bottom side cons. Dane, I wrote able to extend and make plays outside the pocket. Well, that's specifically because I saw that in Georgia. Yeah. And I started my film session at Georgia, and I worked my way backwards. Didn't love Penn State at all. I think there was a game against Rutgers or somebody like that, or Temple. There was another one that I wasn't crazy about. But I'm not sure. I haven't written these notes officially, but do I put that he can extend plays and make plays outside the pocket? He did it against the national champs.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It is a tough question that I think, all these teams that are looking at these quarterbacks, they're going to be asking themselves these exact questions because, you've seen it, but is he truly comfortable? Is it truly part of his game moving forward? I don't know. I think it's something that these teams are going to battle with. That's why from team to team, we're going to have different orders of how these quarterbacks are going to be drafted. And it's really interesting when you have 4, 5, 6 teams picking the top 12 picks that could conceivably go with a quarterback. And, especially in this scenario where part of me was hoping that Houston was just going to get that number 1 overall pick and make it easy for mock drafts at number 1. But,
right.
Let's move.
Well,
I can tell you right.
Ready. I can tell you right now.
This is Lance's area of expertise.
I can tell you right now.
Daily radio in Houston.
Right.
I already highlighted your second pick on the radio today. It did not go over well.
I can understand. I mean, Will Levis at number 2 to the Texans. Look, is this just going to be Levis checks so many boxes that you want from a prototypical standpoint,
except makes the offense a lot better and scores tons of points. Those boxes he doesn't check.
Look, again, look, reasons and excuses. We have to figure those out when it comes to quarterback. He had such a good junior year, and then he took us a little bit of a step back this year. Now,
Wandale Robinson.
Offensive line.
Yeah, that's it.
Losing Liam Cohen was a big deal. Even though I thought they made a nice hire with Rich Andrello, he's already out.
They already fired him.
I mean, fall guy or not, I don't know. But now some of the blame belongs on Will Levis. There's no doubt he needs to play faster. He needs to do a better job putting his offense in. But I thought there were enough positive flashes that make you go, he can make that small window throw. He can do all these things. And I think it will not be hard for NFL teams to convince themselves that, hey, once we get our coaches with this kid, he's got a lot of things going for him with his intelligence. The toughness is a big factor with him as well. And he is so tough, not just as like a runner and lowering his pads and all that, but he'll play through injuries. There's a lot of things that check boxes with Will Levis that I think it's not going to be surprising when a team has him as either quarterback 1 or 2 in this draft.
It's amazing to me because I look at this and maybe is now the time to get into the Anthony Richardson conversation as well, because I feel like Levis is a more polished version of Anthony Richardson, but neither of them put up the numbers in college that you would want from someone going this high in the draft. And that's why, Lance, I'm very curious to hear what you have to say, because you're in Houston. Nick Caserio, this is his show. The Rasputin is gone in Houston. He was shoved out the door finally. So what do the Texans want out of this? And I mean, how much did the greatest drive in the history of Davis Mills mess things up?
We'll see. Is it the Jets win that went from Trevor Lawrence to Zach Wilson? We'll see. I don't think that Trevor Lawrence, I don't think Bryce Young has the generational, and I don't like that word generational. That's used like LeBron is a generational talent. People throw around the phrase elite and generational like it's nothing. Trevor Lawrence has rare dual threat mobility. He had a very good arm. He had a high end, high leverage background in college football. He had footwork. He had size. He had everything. He has all that stuff, right? Bryce Young doesn't have some of those features and some of those traits, but he's a winner and he makes very, very good plays. So I don't think there's a Trevor Lawrence in this draft. With that said, it hurts because, at one, you had your choice of quarterbacks if that's what you're looking for. You could get exactly who you want. Now, maybe they'll stack C.J. Stroud as a number one quarterback. I don't know. Let's just go through. Let's just play detective here. Nick Caserio, when he was in New England, they drafted guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett. They drafted Ryan Mallett. They drafted Jared Stidham. These are guys with arm talent. They have pretty good size. Stidham was like 6'2", 214. So he's not small, but he's not a giant. But these are guys who have arm talent now. Jacoby could throw it.
There are also people who had their college offenses producing at a better than expected level.
Oh yeah. No, I think most did. I think most will. But what I'm saying is there's a traits background. Then he drafted Davis Mills. That was actually his pick, Nick Caserio. So when you look at the physical profile, it doesn't say Bryce Young, but that's the same case with Chris Ballard. And I think that Bryce Young may be in play there if you're a really good quarterback and you're a team that's a little desperate to get your quarterback situation right, which is the Houston Texans as well. Here's my problem. When I watched Will Levis, I just don't think the tape is good enough for me to make him a second pick. And I don't care about traits. He and Anthony Richardson are buckshot accuracy guys to just spray it all over. The difference is for me, though, Anthony Richardson, I see the bad footwork. I see things that can be corrected a little bit. And I thought when Anthony Richardson threw in rhythm from the pocket, he could deliver with a lot better accuracy. But there are times that, like, you can look at all the data points in the throws, and he's just not – you can't call him accurate. And when he's bad, he can't self-correct inside a game. And I think that's a big concern because when he starts bad, you knew he was going to be bad the entire game. I think that was LSU maybe where he was just spraying it all over the place. I got to see which game that was. Maybe it wasn't LSU. And then with Will Levis, when I first started watching, I saw throws where I'm like, ooh, that's Aaron Rodgers-y type stuff. And you see the arm talent, but then he'll make throws that just from me to you, Dane, here on the computer screen. And that's not far. And he started at people's feet. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, how can your accuracy and placement be that bad? Guys are constantly breaking stride for him. And so that's a big concern for me is I wonder about that, what I call everyday accuracy, where the throws, the basic throws, a simple out, you just got to throw the ball, or a swing pass where you got to put it on the running back's hands as he's looking forward, a chance to catch and run. I want my guys catch and run. And I think Levis and Richardson both have those same issues, is they don't have the standard functional accuracy and placement to keep guys on the move. And that's where I think Young and especially Stroud have a big advantage.
And I think that
Hooker too, by the way. Hendon Hooker can deliver the ball with some accuracy.
And Hooker, he'll be a different conversation because a lot of the things you mentioned earlier. But I think if you're looking at Levis or Richardson, you're also going to think back to your evaluation of Josh Allen and say, you know what? He was able to do it. He was able to, Josh Allen would miss simple screen passes at Wyoming.
Gold.
He's the only one who's ever done that.
I know.
I'm saying that's the reasoning that some will use.
No, you're right.
At it and say,
I've already heard it.
Right.
Look at Jay. I say, how about Jake Locker? should we maybe look at Jake Locker too?
Yeah.
I mean, is that fair to look at Jake? Because
the Tim Tebow of the Pacific Northwest, Jake Locker?
Plenty more examples of guys that have not been able to do it and have been able to make those necessary corrections. And it is tough. And, I don't want to hear how Will Levis couldn't, win a starting job in the Big Ten. Like, it's like saying Justin Fields couldn't win a starting job in the SEC. Like, it's just that doesn't count. But
Sean Clifford and Jake Fromm just taking strays here.
Seriously. It is fair to say that this season did not live up to expectations for Will Levis, and some of the same issues that you worried about, he did not maybe take the strides that you wanted to see. But I think I need to point this out with mock drafts. It's never what I think should happen. It's always what I'm hearing. And I do know there's plenty of Will Levis fans around the league based off of the traits and what they think he could become.
Well, let's talk about the other guy who throws laser beams, not particularly accurate at short range, Anthony Richardson. Dane, I admit I made an audible gasp the first time I opened this mock draft and saw you had the Lions taking Anthony Richardson at 15, and I understand the reasoning.
Yeah,
they've got Jared Goff; he's doing very well. You can redshirt him behind Jared Goff, so sort of like the Chiefs did with Mahomes and Alex Smith. I get all that. I live in Gainesville, Florida. I've known about Anthony Richardson since he was in high school. Like, I don't see it. I see the traits for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see it all being put together on a football field against the best defensive players and the best defensive minds.
Have you ever heard of a guy named Josh Allen?
Yeah.
See how easy that is?
Tell me about this Josh Allen character. Okay. Can I give you my Josh Allen theory? I think I've probably told Dane this. So I did a huge story on Josh Allen for Sports Illustrated before his senior season at Wyoming. I guess it was redshirt junior season, whatever his last season at Wyoming was. And I talked to his parents, every coach who ever coached him growing up. And I keep going back to this photo his dad sent me of Josh as a junior in high school, being like, I think he was at the time, he was like 6 foot or 6'1" and weighed like 175. He was rail thin. And Josh was a very late physical developer. He was still growing in college. Like he went into JUCO at like 6'2", and he came out at 6'5".
Wow.
So could it be that Josh developed as an NFL player because he was a late bloomer physically and reached physical maturation later than most people do? Whereas most of these guys are physically mature by the time they get to the NFL, and it's kind of set in stone at that point.
Could be, growing into your body. I see one of the things I've noticed, especially
Josh Allen's nickname, by the way, in high school, his high school baseball coach called him Tortuga.
Because
he's
so
turtle.
Slow. Yeah.
Yes.
Jeez.
So I do think there could be something to that. I see this with players need to grow. We see it in basketball a lot. We see it sometimes in football with defensive linemen too. You got to grow into your body. It's the old giraffe trying to take steps. I think with Josh, my thing that I come back to is that when I look back and say, why did I miss on him? Well, it's because I didn't put enough credence into the bad receivers not being able to get open. And some of that was with Oregon too, with Justin Herbert. But the other thing was, and I did point this out, he didn't throw with timing. So he was late on anticipatory throws. And so when you're late on anticipatory throws, you're already going to allow defenses to start crowding your receivers, even with separation. When your guys aren't getting any separation at all, you're basically going to have a ton of contested throws. And I think that was a big part of, when you have Cole Beasley underneath, at times, not, now it's McKenzie.
No, it's not
and
an
Beasley.
accident when Stephon Diggs showed up.
Yeah,
things
everything
really started
changed.
to blossom.
Everything changed. And so I don't think it does make Josh Allen better. But what it does is it diminishes some of those negative things. Like maybe I haven't studied him, but maybe he doesn't throw with great anticipation now, Andy. But it's a lot easier when you have a rocket arm and a guy like Stephon Diggs, and then you just get better.
Now, I will tell you that Anthony Richardson's receivers at Florida were not good. Not good at all. Ricky Pearsall, the transfer from Arizona State, was the best guy he had. Like I do wonder if you put him with Ohio State's receivers, what would that look like? You put him with, average to good NFL receivers. What does that look like? But the part I have that I would worry about with him is just the processing, the reading, the timing. You know, get the ball out on time. And that seemed to be a real problem in that offense.
I thought he was bad against intermediate zone. Just didn't. I thought the processing was a big problem too. Recognizing where he wanted to go with the football is something that it's a big concern, because you got to win intermediate throws in the NFL for the most part. And I thought he really struggled at times against zone, knowing where the zone holes were going to be and how to exploit them. And that's a concern, because once you show a weakness like that, it's like a guy who can't hit a fastball or can't hit a curve. That's all you're going to see. Once you get a certain the book is out there on you, everyone will exploit.
See, I can see Richardson getting drafted wherever he gets drafted. He gets into a preseason game, middle of the first quarter against backups, maybe a couple first teamers, and the opposing team is playing completely vanilla, not showing anything, and he just lights it up. And everybody's like, oh my God, we've got the steal of the draft. And then the first week of the regular season happens and he sees a real defense, and it's all downhill from there.
He's a complete freak show. I mean, we've talked about him a lot, just the physical abilities, but so much of his draft grade will come based off the interview process. Just what does he know? What does he not know? It's hard to figure that part out, especially for those of us on the outside. So there's a lot of unknown with Anthony Richardson in terms of how he's going to be perceived and ultimately drafted. I mean, Lance, if I had, this is an unfair question, I'm going to ask you anyways. Give me what you would guess is Anthony Richardson's draft range at this point. Like, he could be as high as this pick. It could be as low as this pick. What do you think the range is now, your early guess?
My early guess would be, without looking at the teams, just a very general number, like 10 to 40.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, Malik Willis went in the third round. So my range is going to be, I think he's got, my grade is going to be about the same as that I had on Willis. And, Pickett and Corral were basically, all three of those guys were basically about the same for me. I really liked Matt Corral. Kenny Pickett, there were some things that concerned me. But much like Justin Herbert, I think some of the concerns I had about Pickett, he's starting to make me feel a little bit better about some of those issues. With Richardson, I just think the talent is so immense that I have to say like a top 10, because I could see somebody falling in love with that. But then if you really just follow the tape, because Malik Willis had bad tape last year. It was bad tape. Yeah. He had really good talent. Richardson's just been up and down tape, but he's got tremendous physical tools. So I have to go all the way to the 40s just because I saw it happen with Malik Willis fell there, and he had some terrific tools as well. If I had to put money on it, I think 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, though.
Yeah. I agree.
How many did you end up having in your mock?
4. With Young at 1, 2 was Will Levis. We skipped over at 5. That's why I had the Panthers trading up to get CJ Stroud. And then Richardson at 15. I had the Lions moving up. And look, Lions fans were not happy with me. And I get it. Like, trust me, I totally understand. But look, a job of a mock draft is to just lay out a scenario. And Brad Holmes, I don't think, is going general manager of the Lions. He's not going into this draft saying, okay, got to get ourselves a quarterback. Like, I don't think that's the number one goal here. They're fine with Jared Goff as the starter, but I also think they're realistic that he's not the long-term answer. And I mean, if you gave him truth serum, I don't think he would say that he feels they're going to win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. So you're on the lookout to upgrade that position if you can. And if they have a high grade on Anthony Richardson, absolutely, I can see them moving up a few spots.
But Andy, how different do you think that is from what we saw with the Kansas City Chiefs, where Alex Smith was a nice little quarterback, just like Jared Goff? You had a good team, but I think drafting.
Well, I tell you the difference. They had a chance to win it. Great college quarterback.
No, the scenario. Yes, Mahomes was. Well, I would push back a little bit about great college quarterback.
Their defense stunk.
Yes, but he made a lot of
very good.
mistakes. He made a lot of mistakes. He had great talent.
A lot of interceptions,
but a lot of interceptions. But he plays to his ability. And he's a guy who clearly benefited from having better players around him. But I mean, the philosophy of this is what I'm talking about. Forget being Anthony Richardson.
Year.
The philosophy of, I feel like Detroit is on the move.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some really good things ahead. Good running back group, good offensive line. The receivers, they can still upgrade a little bit. But
gonna be an unbelievable D line with whoever they get.
Yeah, they need some help in the secondary. But you know why that pick makes some sense to me, Dane, is what you could say along the process is, man, we really got to where we like. I'm going through here. Okay,
well, I understand it.
We love Richardson, and this is a guy we think that is going to be a sustainable. He's going to help us sustain at the Pat Mahomes level. Now, I don't buy that. You don't buy that, Andy, but I could see the philosophy.
But here's my question. I'm going to ask if I'm their front office. We can get one more good year out of Jared Goff for sure. Like I would feel very confident in Jared Goff being able to take a step forward with that roster and maybe even put them in the play. I mean, they were so close to the playoffs this year. Put them in the playoffs next year. If that happens, can you get another year out of Jared Goff? Because if you think you can, or if you think it's even borderline, then you wait until next year's QB class. I know you don't have the Rams pick anymore at that point, but perhaps you trade with somebody who will give you next year's first rounder who you think might stink next year. And then you're into a deeper quarterback class that you might like a little bit better.
And I think that very well might happen. I think there's a very good chance. I like I said before, I don't think Holmes is going to go into this draft saying we need to get a quarterback. Like they are comfortable moving forward with Goff. It's more of strike while the iron's hot. And if a quarterback that they have ranked high were to fall to them, or at least within striking distance, it does make some sense too. I think a lot of Lions fans are being a little short-sighted on this because they were so close to the playoffs. And Jared Goff did play so well down the stretch that they think, oh, just upgrade our defense a little bit and we'll be in the playoffs next year. I don't think it's that simple. And again, going to the playoffs is a good step, but let's think further than that. And, let's try to win a Super Bowl here. If you don't believe Jared Goff can help win you a Super Bowl, then, what are we doing? Let's go find someone that can.
Is there a guy who can win you a Super Bowl in this draft? I don't think there is.
Well, and 100%, I agree with that. This is just a scenario that if the Lions had a high grade on Richardson, I don't know if they do or not. They have seen him quite a few times this year, so they will be familiar with Anthony Richardson. I don't know if they went to the good games or the bad games.
If they went to the Utah game, they're all in. Let's go.
Yeah, right. So, there's so much of this conversation that is guesswork at this point. And that's why a mock draft in January, I think, is more for laying out potential scenarios more so than anything else. And so in no way am I saying the Lions should or will draft a quarterback in the first round this year. But I do think it is fair to say if the right quarterback were to be in striking distance, I could see them making a move.
All right. So this has been a Heisman Trophy podcast. At this point, we've only talked about quarterbacks. Let's talk about some of the other positions. We've talked a ton about Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. Me and Dane have. So Dane and Lance, I want to get your opinions on that next tier of defensive players below Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, because
just non-quarterbacks. I think just after those two, and Lance, I'll be eager to hear what you have to say. After those two, I think there's a gap between who the next non-quarterback prospects are in this draft.
After Jalen Carter and Will Anderson, yeah, I think Tyree is a guy who's way up there for me. But a lot of that's projection. He was not as good against the run, not as physical as I was expecting. I thought he'd be more aggressive. I'm projecting the traits. So I've got him in the 67 range, which is going to be a quality year one starter. I think he's going to be he's going to be a top 8 pick and maybe as high as top 4 or 5, but because his traits and he's going to be a good tester too. The guy that I was pretty blown away by, Dane, and I was interested to see where you had him. And I don't know that I've seen a guy who plays quite like this for a while, was Drew Sanders. Yeah. I didn't have any opinion on Drew Sanders going into my tape study. I intentionally avoid a lot of things so I can watch everything, and I don't want a negative or a positive filter to cloud it. So I turn the tape on, do my background work first. Okay. Alabama 5-star, Denton, Texas, out near you. Well, where you used to be.
Yeah.
Is a guy who has been tutored by Alabama, which means his hand usage is going to be good. He's going to have some good technique stuff off the edge. But then I turn the tape on, and he's playing inside linebacker. Okay. He's an inside linebacker. He's 6'5" 233, I believe is what. So immediately I'm starting to see some Leighton Vander Esch. I'm like, okay, he's got some very similar size. But then I see some up and down instincts, but he's an aggressive guy. He's not a guy that sits back. He'll take his shots downhill, which accounts for why he had like 13 and a half tackles for loss. Then I see them move him, especially early in the season. He was rushing as a stand-up rusher, and this guy has a really smooth inside slide and slap where he can beat tackles across their face. He used it as a stand-up rusher in the A gap, in the B gap, as an outside linebacker, as like a rush end. He has range. He's a good tackler, can cover a little bit. And I started thinking, man, he hasn't played this position. Like, he's still going to keep getting better at this. And my comp started to change to Tremaine Edmunds, because I remember Tremaine Edmunds filled up a lot of stat sheets. I think this guy's going to be very explosive. I think he's going to test well. He's going to run well. As a matter of fact, I looked up some stats from him when he was in high school, and he ran well. I think his vertical was 36 in high school, maybe 37. And I just think when you have a guy that is productive as an inside linebacker with that kind of size, that kind of length, that kind of aggression, the technique, and now you tell me that he is a capable rusher, because I believe he's a capable rusher.
Oh, yeah. I
just see a guy who has maybe Anthony Barr qualities. Maybe that's the guy that I should be looking at from when he first came into the league as my comp. But I think Drew Sanders is going to catch a very high grade from me, much higher than people are anticipating.
I like the Levante David replacement idea that you had in your mock drafting. That's a good comp right there.
Going 19th overall in my mock, and he's a guy that just you look at the stat sheet, looks great. Over 100 tackles, double-digit tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks. I mean, the production's good. You put on the tape. There are some times, he needs to do a better job, shedding blocks and here and there. And there's not a finished product by any means, but the fact that you can line him up anywhere you want in that front seven, basically, and he's going to help you out, gives you a lot of optimism about what he could be. He's a son of a coach. There's a lot of things where you go, okay. And you just keep inching him up. Drew Sanders, I think, has a good chance to be the first linebacker drafted this year.
Yeah, he needs to get stronger. I mean, and he's only got 1 year of full-time starting experience. So I don't think, my concern with Tremaine Edmunds when he came out was he's not a very instinctive player, but had all the physical tools. I think there's some things that still need to, work themselves out. It's less about instincts, more about fit, run fits and knowing where he needs to be. But I had a high grade on Tremaine Edmunds. I was a big Tremaine Edmunds fan. 7.0, which is potential Pro Bowl talent.
He's about to get paid.
Yeah, and he's really starting to come around. But I think Drew Sanders is a guy to me that I'm going to have really high. And I'll be a lot higher on I know we're working kind of haphazardly. We're not exactly going through the list, but I want people to go to the website and read your stuff. I was hoping to see Bijan Robinson higher in your mock.
I don't know where to put him. Trust me, I was mad that I had to put him so low.
Where'd you put him?
31 to the Eagles. And
Same. Also, not fair to the rest of the NFC East if that happens.
No.
Well, the last time the Eagles drafted a running back in the first round, I wasn't born yet. So it's back to the Ron Jaworski days as starting quarterback. It's been a long time. So this is a team, a franchise, an organization that does not look to draft the running back position that early. But at 31, I mean, just run the cart up to the podium. But when you do an exercise like this and you really look at the potential landing spots for certain positions, especially a running back, I mean, you're looking at it and it's like, okay, who first of all, who needs a running back? And then who would actually take one in the first round. And the teams that really need, and we'll see what happens this offseason. Saquon Barkley's a free agent, Josh Jacobs. I mean, there's going to be some fluctuation from team to team at the running back position. Miles Sanders. So we'll see how that plays out. But there's not a lot of clear landing spots for a running back.
There never is when you do mock drafts.
Right. And so like Carolina, they could, they traded Christian McCaffrey away. Are they really going to draft a running back in the top 10? No, they're rebuilding. They have a lot of other needs. They're not going to do that. And so, I mean, trust me, Bijan Robinson, I think, is a top 10, 12 talent in this class. It was a hard guy to figure out where to put him.
I would not want to see that offense, especially if, I don't know if that entire line stays together, obviously, but I do have a lot of faith in Jeff Stoutland, the Eagles O-line coach. So no matter what happens, good God, with Jalen Hurts and Bijan Robinson in the same backfield.
How would you like it if the Dallas Cowboys took him and cut Zeke and let? Yeah. Isn't Pollard a free agent this year?
He is. I'd be surprised if Pollard is not back. But yeah, I think there's a very good chance.
I like your Apu-Ika pick for the Cowboys, though.
Yeah, well, and it's another team that usually doesn't draft that position, but I think that they could make an exception for him. I just, speaking to my people in Dallas, that close to the organization, I don't think that they would draft Bijan Robinson there in the late 20s. But you know what? You never know. You cannot rule it out. That's a definite possibility. And I in my first mock draft, I had him going to Baltimore. Right in the early 20s. Just J.K. Dobbins you just weren't sure injury wise what that was going to look like. But now that he's back and looks healthy, I don't know that they'd necessarily make that move. So it is tough. Not a lot of obvious landing spots, but Tampa, if Fournette's gone, could they go that direction? Maybe, who knows? They might be looking for a new identity on offense. If Tom Brady's not back, and are you really going to roll out Kyle Trask as your starter? I mean, who knows what the quarterback position will look like in Tampa? Could they lean into the running game and go with the Bijan Robinson? That's something else that I thought.
I just figured out what's going to happen.
Oh no.
They're going to draft Anthony Richardson, keep Kyle Trask, and hire Dan Mullen as their offensive coordinator. Well, they're going to bring the band back together.
Hey, I mean, I've heard worse ideas out there. So, but I mean, and that was one of the reasons I had Detroit trading up for Richardson is there's a couple teams behind them, Tampa, Seattle, that could potentially look to leapfrog to get Richardson as well. But yeah, it's the running back position, because I also think Jahmyr Gibbs is a first-round talent. Yeah. I think he's one of the top 30 players in this draft.
Great value if somebody grabs him at like number 35.
Yeah, but it's a hard guy to the running back position.
Yeah, he's not a lead back. I mean, he's a toy that you can use to really mismatch and win games. Like, it's one of those weird things where, okay, is he going to get you 18 carries a game? No. What's he going to do? Well, he's
18 touches. Yeah.
He'll get out of the backfield and line up, and now you're in trouble.
To the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick by the Chiefs a few years ago?
I think they
feel like you got what you need, and so now you pick a toy.
I think they saw him, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as more of a lead guy that could help with that offense. Where Gibbs, it's just tough because he is at the combine. He'll be 205, 207 pounds, so he's not quite Kamara, but you see that ability, and it's like, man, he's a game changer. And I mean, Bryce Young did not have a ton of talent around him this year, but he absolutely had one of the best backs in the nation.
When things were tough for him offensively, he went to Gibbs. Like, I remember being at the Texas game, and when the offense couldn't get going, it's like, all right, we're going to, as Bill O'Brien's play calls too, but we're going to Gibbs. We're going to get Gibbs the ball and let Gibbs make plays. And, I think I think that's one of the nice things is, depending on who your quarterback is, it's nice to have a running back that can give you some carries, and he has the speed to hit chunk plays. But then more importantly, all of a sudden when he rolls out of the backfield, my player comp on him was Kamara. When he rolls out of the backfield and he's in the slot, you got to have a plan. You can't just match him up with anybody.
Can I give you another comp? Nyheim Hines coming out of NC State.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Yeah. I think he's a little bigger than Nyheim, but
Nyheim's like 198 pounds, but a guy who can be everything in your offense, and that's what Nyheim was, and also can return kicks. That is, Gibbs was absolutely the security blanket for Young because their receivers couldn't get separation. That they were not an elite receiving core this year until the Kansas State game.
I don't think that Gibbs doesn't have this type of speed, but Chris Johnson, like that speed is such a big part of what Chris Johnson did. But I think that if you combine Chris Johnson with Alvin Kamara, I think that, the love child of those two would look something similar to like a Gibbs and what he offers. So it's a tough one because, again, we're talking about a little bit of an outlier here. And, we're Bryce Young, outlier size-wise. Peter Skoronski, who might be the best offensive lineman in this class, is an outlier in terms of his length. So there's going to be a lot of interesting discussions with these prospects.
Dane, 3 tight ends between 21 and 27.
Yeah.
And, the one who's a household name in terms of big production in college is obviously Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. You had him going to the Chargers at 21, which I think would be a fabulous pick. But Darnell Washington, we've talked about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I contend he will be more of a receiving threat in the NFL than he was in college because he won't have the best tight end in the country on his team.
But I don't know that he is. I think his physical traits. I think there's a lack of quickness. Well, his ball skills were actually way better than I expected. He moves a little stiff-legged in space. But then when the ball's up, he actually makes some really good catches. Like he's got way better ball skills than I.
He turns into a basketball player.
What if I'm going to throw you off? I'm going to throw you way off here. And I had this conversation now as a run blocker. I actually talked to their offensive.
You going to move to offensive tackle?
I'm going to consider it at some point in his career. If there's so much value in tackles. Now I asked his offensive line coach, what's his frame like? Does he have the frame? Because he's ripped. He's shredded. He goes, listen, he can. I mean, this guy has, I don't know how much weight he would carry, but he's already in around 280. He could be in the 300s.
Lane Johnson is an interesting comp in that case in terms of freak athlete who happens to play offensive line.
But the technique, though, is very ragged right now as a run blocker. Yeah. He's just so big and so strong, and he torques like he can torque a defensive end out of the way. Yep. But he's a waist bender. His hands are outside, and yet he's still getting guys blocked. And I'm like, man. And I wrote it the last sentence, just a throwaway sentence.
Pass pro might be a problem.
I just said it will be interesting. Yeah, exactly. I just said it will be interesting to see if any teams consider a tackle transition at any point during his career.
And that's fair. He is the leanest 280 pounds I've ever seen. I mean, it's just it's fascinating. And
you know who was that in high school? Tyron Smith.
Yeah.
You go there. There's a picture from a USC camp of Tyron Smith as a high school junior, and you're like, oh my God, that can't be real.
His teammate at Georgia, Broderick Smith, was like that. I mean, if you look at a picture of him playing basketball, he is a lean 285 pounds, but also the left tackle on the football team. So, it's interesting because he's so unique. He's a rare. I mean, there's not even like a real comp here for Darnell Washington. I think he'll have mostly second round grades around the league. But for the right team, the right scheme, you look at what he would add in terms of his blocking and what he gives you in the passing game. I would not be surprised at all if we, see Darnell Washington sneak in there. And I actually had 5 tight ends going in the top 50, which is we don't see very often.
It's a great tight end draft.
Well, let's talk about Luke Musgrave because not a lot of people watched Oregon State, though you should. They're very good, but he was hurt most of the year. Mm-hmm. But he's got an incredible skill set.
He's so athletic. He's going to run really well. Former skier. He's got that type of background. He's very fluid. I think.
So you're saying he's a better skier than me?
Yes, I am comfortable saying that. Even though
I'm safe saying that.
Yes. As a blocker too, you see that fluidity. And Lance, I think we've talked about him. You like Luke Musgrave?
Yeah, he's my top tight end.
Boom, there you go. I see. And I think a lot of. Because he's not getting a lot of run right now out there.
Played 2 games this year.
Yeah, he had a knee injury. And so as long as that'll be a big, make sure the knee's okay. I haven't heard if he's actually going to play in the Senior Bowl or not. But hopefully at the Combine, the knee's looking good. He has all the ability to go in the first round. So I got some pushback from people about Luke Musgrave being in the first round. But, I mean, if you've watched this kid, he's got the athleticism. And he's a better blocker than you would expect.
Blocks. He's a better like Dalton Kincaid at Utah is – look, if you want everything, Meyer's your guy.
Yes.
Right. He's a guy who is going to block. He's not as fast, but he's a consistent target. He blocks for you. If you want a card carrying Y, that's your guy. If you're looking for a guy who is more of a Kyle Shanahan type of tight end, maybe an Andy Reid tight end, but especially more of a Shanahan because they're going to block more, it's Musgrave.
Yes.
If you want a guy that is going to be an Andy Reid type tight end who's going to split out, maybe not block as much, but is really fluid in space and can make catches, or, back in the day with, Aaron Hernandez, granted, I know he's a terrible person, or he was a terrible person, but he was a tremendous, now he's a better blocker. But, New England kept trying to get that balance right for years where they had the Y and then they had the dangerous because Belichick clearly recognized the matchup potential of two tight end sets. Then that's going to be Kincaid because he's the guy who splits out and catches everything, man. He's got great hands. He's a really athletic. So those three guys, for me, are my 3 first-round tight ends for me personally. But they're slightly different flavors of tight end, each one of them. But for me, I like the fact that Musgrave will get after you as a blocker, and you have to at Oregon State. Yeah. But I want to get back to something that Stacy Searles, the offensive line coach for Georgia, told me. He said the thing that made Darnell Washington special, he went back to this like 3 times without me even asking. He kept saying, man, he's just such a matchup issue in the red zone. And he didn't mean as a pass catcher. He meant as you reduce your defensive line tighter and tighter into gaps, now you've got linebackers on Washington, and he captures the edge, and it's so easy to run over the edge for Georgia because Darnell Washington mismatches whoever's on the edge. He can get out in space and block linebackers or safeties. And so when you think about tight ends, you always have to think about what is it that a team really wants from their tight end. And Musgrave is going to be the guy that if you say, man, we want a pass catcher and we're not afraid to go volume, but for us, we got to have him block. We got to have him block. Okay, you're going to like Musgrave better than Kincaid, or you're going to like Mayer better than Kincaid. Well, but we really want a guy that can match people up. We want Dallas Clark. Oh, okay. You're going to want Kincaid. Well, we want it all. Oh, you're going to love this kid. From Notre Dame. And then you got Tucker Kraft, who I know you're high on, Dane. You're very high on him from San Diego, from South Dakota State. And then Darnell Washington. That was the other tight end.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, 5 in the top 50. I had Dalton Kincaid going 45 to the Packers. Could easily see him go higher. No doubt. I mean, he is maybe the most natural ball catcher among these tight ends in terms of isolating the football and going up and getting it. I just throw on his USC tape, and it's just tells you everything you need to know about him as a pass catcher. So
I like the Michigan tight end too.
Schoonmaker, he's my next guy. Him and Laporta are the next guys. I mean, it is a loaded tight end class. Those 7 guys, and then even after that, I mean, it doesn't drop off. There are some guys that once you get to the 4th round and mid rounds, that you think could be productive. So this is an outstanding tight end group.
Andy, you've been in this business long enough to know there's nothing that editors and executives at NFL Network or ESPN or CBS Sports, there's nothing they love more than when you tell them, guys, this is a loaded tight end draft. They're going to be very excited about the tight ends.
Yeah, they just start their palms.
That's like saying,
it's
unusually deep at center this year.
This is a great guard draft.
I can't sell guard draft on TV. I can.
Hey, at least tight ends, they score fantasy points. So
the tight end, okay, if we're talking about the chessboard, the tight end is the queen. Yes. You can do the most with it. And you just brought up one of my favorite people, emergency Iowa Wildcat quarterback Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's go.
I didn't think he could make guys miss, and then I throw on the bowl game against Kentucky, and he's
my Lord, he was destroyed. He wasn't making them miss so much as just running through them.
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I was like, okay, this is new. So this is it's a fun tight end group that we usually don't see 3 tight ends go in the 1st round. I mean, it happened couple years ago. That was the Evan Ingram, Njoku, OJ Howard draft, I think. And then before that,
how'd that work out?
Well, I mean, Njoku's pretty good.
Njoku's very good.
Evan Ingram's
kind of come into his own.
Yeah, in Jacksonville. But I mean, I think that this year it's just a little different because the tight end group is it's just so loaded. So yeah, it's don't be surprised if we see 3 in the first round, 5 in the top 60. It's definitely possible.
One more from your mock before we go, Dane. And we've talked about this before. I think you might have had this person here in your first mock as well. You got Jackson Smith-Njigba going to the Chiefs at 30. And I understand your reasoning when you say, okay, they may not do this. They may not feel the need to go receiver, but without Tyreek Hill, they're just looking for weapons here. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I feel like the average fan maybe forgot because he didn't play but the first game this year. But this is a guy who I have a feeling, like Jamar Chase after he sat out a year at LSU and he was drafted very high, but he gets to the Bengals like, oh yeah, still really good.
Yeah.
Jackson Smith-Njigba could have been the best receiver in college football this year had he been healthy. Put him with Patrick Mahomes, and that feels very, very unfair.
Yeah, in a way, it's a little repetitive because, Travis Kelce is basically their slot receiver. And that's what Smith-Njigba is. He will find those soft spots. He will get open. And that's kind of what Travis Kelce does. But add another guy like that, just in obviously a totally different package. His ball skills, his route running, he'd be ready to go from day one. And I think that, he gives the Chiefs something else to play with on offense, which would be fun. So they don't have to, with an MVP quarterback, you don't have to go receiver in the first round. But if the right guy is there, maybe like a Smith-Njigba, I certainly think it makes sense. I mean, and Lance, last question before we hop off here. Who is the best receiver that you've seen in this class so far?
Oh, let me see. I've still got some to watch. Let me see who's got my top grade right now. Well, right now, Jalen Hyatt has my top grade. I've got a 65 grade on him. I like Quentin Johnston. I wasn't as blown away by him when I watched him as I thought. A lot more drops.
Yes. Very
basic route tree. I like Josh Downs. I thought Josh Downs was really a fun receiver to watch. I didn't expect to. I was okay on Jordan Addison. A couple guys that I think are really, but like I've got a lot of guys all bunched up together. I was really a big fan of the potential Tyler Scott from Cincinnati.
Yep.
Zay Flowers from Boston College was a lot of fun to watch. Very confident player.
Both made the second round in this mock. Yep.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers is going to have a better offense around him in the NFL than he had.
Guaranteed.
In terms of the better protection for the quarterback. Jurkovich, I always get this wrong. I pronounce it wrong, but he's got skills, but has been hurt basically his entire career. So Zay Flowers has never really had the ability, an offense that could deliver him the ball.
Yeah, and I want to say also, I need to make this clear because I think it gets to what you're also saying, Andy, is Dane, you asked me who my top receiver that I looked at so far. And so far, yours was Jordan Addison. I was more of a second rounder on Addison. I didn't love the size. I think he's a slot, so I think there's going to be a certain value on him. And sometimes that plays into where I slot guys is what their value is going to be. For me, Jalen Hyatt, the reason I had him one is I understand the limitations. He's not going to be a high volume target. He's Deshaun Jackson or Will Fuller all over again. So there's, I understand what I'm looking at here. He is not going to be a guy who runs a lot of intermediate routes. Is kind of sloppy getting in and out of breaks. But what he does extremely well. And I just think that whoever drafts him is going to draft him with a specific purpose to do something in an offense. And so if he gets with a quarterback that can throw the deep ball, I just think he's going to give whoever the quarterback is a ton of different opportunities. And it goes back to when I had Will Fuller as the top wide receiver over Laquan Treadwell and the kid Corey Coleman. Yep. That was, a bad wide receiver draft. But one of the reasons is because Will Fuller, for all of his drops, I knew he was really good at getting deep and making big plays. You're going to have some drops, but you're going to have some home runs. And I think with Jalen Hyatt, I think he's going to hit a lot of home runs. It's
and the reason really fast. Do that is you stretch the defense. If they're playing zone, you're forcing everybody to cover more physical. And
there's an
area.
Impact on the running game too. When that happens, too.
No doubt. And
impact on the routes underneath intermediate.
And that's why I've been saying this entire process so far that last year we had 6 receivers go top 25. This is not that group. Now it's not a bad wide receiver group, but it's not the loaded group that we've seen the last 2 years.
It's not a loaded draft.
No, it's really, if we're talking honest right now, if this is a safe space, it's not. I mean, it's more. I think it's more average than below average, but it's definitely not above average. And
we're an hour 5 in. The casuals are gone, so don't worry about it.
This is true.
So back to Bryce
This is
Young.
the win. This is when Sam Laporta getting drafted, boys. Just tell us.
This is a big tight end year.
Yeah.
Conversations.
Lean into it.
These are our people. All right. Well, gentlemen, it was a pleasure. And Lance, we're gonna have you with us more often as we go forward toward the draft. And I cannot wait. I'm gonna have to watch your Twitch stream now. How can we find that? By the way?
I'm gonna send it out. You can always send me a direct message, but because I don't know when this is gonna air when we're taping it, but it's gonna be 2:00. You could go to ESPN975.com is my radio station email address, ESPN975.com, and they'll have a link there. I think it's gonna be done through the YouTube channel that we have for the radio station, either through that or through SportsMap. And I'm just gonna go through the whole process. I mean, there'll be a screen capture where I'll go through some of the Pro Football Focus data because they do a really good job of, I want to see all of his rollouts. I want to see all of his scrambles. I want to see all of his, throwing with pressure in his face. And it takes a while to go through quarterbacks, but it's a pretty important process for a guy as good as Bryce Young. And a pick as important as a top 1 or 2 pick,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cannot wait. Gentlemen, we will reconvene next week. We have all-star games to talk about. The Senior Bowl is less than 2 weeks away, or the Senior Bowl practices are less than 2 weeks away. And if you've heard me talk about it, I only care about one-on-one pass pro at practice. That's all I'm really worried about.
I thought you were going to say barbecue, but okay.
Yeah,
that too, that too, and turtle soup. But I'm pumped. It feels real now. The college season is over. Everybody who's going to be in the draft is in the draft. Let's go. We'll talk to you soon.